And a TGIF, everyone. Welcome into the First Call podcast alongside Scott Shapiro. I'm Jeremy Plonk. We're representing First Bet and Express Bet here, and it's time to handicap some stakes races. Derby days in May, but man, this feels like Derby Day. We got the Minnesota Derby. We got the Kentucky Derby winner. We got the Ellis Park Derby this weekend. So, Scott, let's just imagine it's the first Saturday in May again and not August.
Well, I mean, the sun is more sure to be out, or the maybe not, but the temperature is more sure to be high. But other than that, I mean, it's a little bit different than the first Saturday in May. But more than one track to look at. Normally on the first Saturday in May time, we'd be focusing on one. We'll be taking people around the country for sure this week.
Yeah, we've got 5 different tracks lined up. It is Arlington Million, and as I did earlier this week, I will say Arlington Million in air quotes at Colonial Downs, where we'll start with some of our handicapping for this weekend. For those of you on our audio channels, here is the list of races Scott and I will handicap over the next half hour or so. We'll do 7 from Saturday, 1 on Sunday. The Saturday features include Colonial Downs, the Secretariat, the Beverly D, and the Arlington Million, the transplants from Chicago. At Saratoga, they'll do the Saratoga Oaks Invitational and the Sword Dancer, both on the grass on Saturday. To Del Mar, we'll stay on the turf. That's a big theme this week with the yellow ribbon. The Minnesota Derby will be on the dirt at Canterbury Park on Saturday night. And then on Sunday, we'll stay on the dirt with the Ellis Park Derby. We'll look ahead to that one on Sunday the 10th. We've got a lot of great promotions for you this weekend, so be sure to check those out at the promotions page and on the app, first app, with all the promotions to play this weekend. A lot of great handicapping tournaments as well. But we're going to start things off at Colonial Downs, Scott. The Secretariat Stakes, race number 9 on the card. The 9th, 10th, and 11th in succession will be part of a late pick 4 hit and split on Saturday when you play with First Bet and Express Bet. Be sure to check out that Colonial Downs 9 through 12 late pick 4 for the hit and split. The Secretariat Stakes 1 mile on the turf, shortened back from what the race used to be in Chicago. It also used to be a grade 1, now grade 2 company. Who do you like in the 9th at Colonial?
Yeah, 1 mile on the turf here, and not quite the Secretariat, much like we'll find with all 3 of these races that we just speak about now, not quite the quality they used to be. And that's because they used to be amongst the top in their division all year long. I like number 4, Simulate, though, in here quite a bit from a wagering perspective. I don't think we're going to get 8-1, but this is a Son of Kitten's Joy, Jeremy, that's third off the layoff for a trainer that we know knows how to point a horse forward in Bill Mott. One really hasn't done anything wrong since the sprint that clearly was a prep to start the career. A 2-turn horse on both sides. Broke the maiden in the second start against a pretty live group. States' Rights. Warlander hasn't come back and been that well, but States' Rights is legit. And then Bill gives this one time off. And that first race was clearly a prep at Delaware before what I thought was his best effort last out. So, moving forward off a race with 2 races with Lasix, always a question, but hopefully we get the price.
He'll be stepping up into the stakes ranks for the first time, but he'll be doing it off of this effort at the Spa.
To pass them all, he's got a lot of ground to make up as they reach the top of the stretch. 13 Colonies takes the lead. Warlander on the outside is coming, and in between, Simulate's had a beautiful trip, and he's cutting into the margin of 13 Colonies. 13 Colonies, Simulate on the outside, and Simulate takes over under Junior Alvarado, and he strides out to score by almost 3. 13 Colonies was second. Third.
Appreciate you bringing that one back up because I needed 13 Colonies. I think I've had one winner this week at Saratoga, so the 22-1 on 13 Colonies might have gotten me out a little bit, but thanks for digging up that wound. Simulate, though, your top choice here on the road in the Secretariat. A couple horses that are rematched in here, rematched a couple times. The Woodhaven and Penn Mile 1-2 finisher, Cairo Caper and Dream On. Dream On's won the last 2 for Mark Cassie. Probably goes favored in this spot off of credentials, but I don't think this one has any sort of numerical advantage over what you're looking at. Simulate actually ran faster figures than what we've seen from Dream On.
Yeah, I think Dream On at 5-2 would be an underlay. Whether that happens, we'll see. Because like you said, not much of a standout when it comes to numbers. But when you look at the page, I could see the public flocking to this one. 3 wins in 4 starts for, big name commodities in Mark Cassie and Javier Castellano. 5-2, though, would be an absolute play against. I actually think Cairo Caper has just as good a chance.
All right, that's the Secretariat Stakes, race number 9 on Saturday at Colonial. Let's go to the 10th. If you like Scott's choice in there, Simulate, maybe look at a potential daily double into the Beverly D Stakes. The Beverly D, named for Beverly Duchossois, the wife of Dick Duchossois, the original chairman of Arlington Park at the time that the Arlington Million was created, and the Beverly D Stakes. This is the sister race to the Million, a mile and 3/16 the distance, same distance that it was in Chicago, and it's this field of 6 lines up. I'm not quite sure where Be Your Best ends up in here. Also cross-entered at Saratoga on Saturday. So if Be Your Best ends up in here, could go favorite off the win in the Gamely, but still a little TBA there as far as I know.
No, actually, Be Your Best, I think, has been. We're recording this on Friday morning. I think they have committed to this race, and it makes sense.
Good.
The Boston Spa was the other race. Would have been an equally short price or close in that race, but it was a bigger field, looked like a tougher task. So they'll run here, from what I understand. Safi Joseph has just done another great job with this mare, kind of like what he's done with Skippy Longstocking. Hasn't had for as long, but finding the right spots. That was a grade 1 in name, not necessarily the top grade 1 in the Gamely. Same could be said for Beverly D. The one to beat, but I think there's a couple horses here that, price-wise will be worth taking a look at. Spanish Eyes is just 1 for 7, but worth a look. But I went to Beach Bomb, who a little bit of worried about the pace of the race and how she'll fit into that with Charlene's Dream to the outside and Be Your Best to the inside, Jeremy. But this this mare, ran 2 good races at Gulfstream that were fine because they were on the front end. She had things her way over a speed favoring type turf course. But her last couple of efforts, particularly the New York, showed that she fits, and those efforts were not fake in any respect. I don't mean to call anything fake, but when you have a turf course, a little better than looks, I guess is what I would say. I think she's legitimate. So we'll see if she can work out a trip or can get the lead. And also she's been off a little while after that huge effort. So we'll see. But I think Beach Bomb, has good form, enough form at 4-1 that I'll take a look.
She comes off that race against She Feels Pretty in the New York. She Feels Pretty, one of the top mares on the turf in America right now. So really good effort in that one. The last time we saw her in the winner's circle was back at Gulfstream Park in the spring. Let's take a look at Beach Bomb at her best.
Side Silvology, they reach the top of the stretch, and Beach Bomb tries to make a break for it. Beach Bomb turns in on top by a length and a half. My Brazilian Girl is second. Electing an inside run is La Mejana down the center in Silvology. They're an eighth of a mile from home. It's Beach Bomb. She's trying to go a mile and a half down the road. She's looking good with La Mejana trying to close her down at the rail. Silvology on the outside. Yards to go. Beach Bomb just in front. Beach Bomb holds to win the Orchid. Beach Bomb went all the way.
La Mejana's come out of that race to become a real bear in the division as well this year. So a pretty key race there. Beach Bomb, Scott's top choice in the Beverly D Stakes. As you mentioned, Spanish Eyes in there for trainer Brendan Walsh. Be Your Best for Safi Joseph. Competitive group of 6 in there. No Chad Brown, surprisingly enough, in the Beverly D. You think fillies and mares on the turf, you expect Chad Brown to be loaded up in that spot, but he is conspicuously absent in the Beverly D. To the Arlington Million we go in race number 11 on the card, the $1 million race. One of the first real TV races that got me into the game back in the early 1980s. Before the Breeders' Cup, there was John Henry on NBC Sports and Jay Randolph hosting and Pete Axthelm as the handicapper. And those races on NBC, we didn't get a lot of national coverage for races outside of the Triple Crown back in those days. So it was a really interesting first $1 million race ever in thoroughbred racing. Of course, in American horse racing, the All-American Futurity for the quarter horses beat the Arlington Million to the 7-figure plateau. But the Arlington Million was really kind of big 80s in the big 80s. And it's a race that's lived on through a couple different iterations now. They had a year at Churchill Downs after Arlington Park was closed by CDI. And now the last couple years run at Arlington Park. 1.25 miles, still the distance. It's not your father's Arlington Million for sure. It's a different kind of race now. But the one piece of intrigue they were able to pull out this year was Mystk Dan entering at the last moment for trainer Kenny McPeak. He had one workout on the turf, and McPeak gave the green light to run in this year's Arlington Million. Let's start the discussion with Mystk Dan in here because he is the name and the headliner. I don't think he'll go favored in this race, obviously, first time on the turf, but let's talk about the 2024 Kentucky Derby winner. This is the only time we've seen him on the turf. He had to work August 1st at Saratoga on the Oklahoma track and on the training track's turf course there. McPeak saw enough here to go ahead and take a shot. Kenny's certainly not a trainer unwilling to take a shot, Scott. I mean, he'll put horses all over the place, and sometimes it might be for posterity and to run in the big places, and other times it might be where the horse fits best. I would be against Mystk Dan in a true grade 1 on the turf, but I don't see this as a grade 1 field. This is more grade 2, grade 3 level, and he just might fit. I think he's reaching out nicely enough in here. Certainly not enough to get any kind of sense if he's going to handle the grass, but I give him a puncher's chance against this group.
Well, I mean, I think when I look at I go through my normal process on horses trying the turf or trying a new surface for the first time, he doesn't check all that many boxes. I feel like this is a last-minute stab. It's not as if he was pointing to the race. The pedigree on the bottom side, you can make some turf, influence cases. Golden Scent, not necessarily a horse you would expect to move up on pedigree. And the trainer not known for winning it first out on the grass. But what he does have going for him is I think he's going to get the same lovely trip he got in the Derby and that he loves so much. He's got the rider that'll give it to him in Brian Hernandez. I looked at the Time Form U.S. Pace Projector, part of the Daily Racing Form PPs, and it has Mystk Dan amongst the pace setters. I don't see any way that happens. It's his natural speed on dirt versus turf horses. I think that, the algorithm saw it for that reason. I think he's going to be covered up perfectly in a pocket trip with Vesting, Runaway Storm, and Time Song all likely to be ahead of him. So if he has it on the turf, I could see why someone would make a case for him.
I mean, the deal with him is, you look, he's run twice on wet tracks. He's run very well on wet tracks. That was the Oaklawn race on a wet track that everybody's like, holy cow, this might just be a wet track freak. And then, of course, on Derby Day, he was able to win when it wasn't listed as wet. But I think horses with wet track form often translate well to the turf. I think those kind of go back and forth a little bit. And horses who can run on the turn and cut the corner often do well on the turf. It's a little different situation here at Colonial on the turf because it's an outer turf course and it's not necessarily tight turf turns, but a lot of this race will be on turns, and I think he runs well through the turns, and he's going to get that inside trip. I think he's going to get a really good run in here, and look, if you see a horse who got beat a length and a half by Sierra Leone last time, who came back to win the Whitney, when you look down the line, I mean, the class of the other horses in this race, if this race was on dirt, he'd be 2-5. So the difference between dirt and turf is 2-5 versus maybe 4-1. And I think he's worth a gamble at that point. If he was favored in this race, 2-1 or so, I think he'd try to beat him. But I think he's going to be around 4-1, and I think he's worth a bet in here. I know you're not taking him. I will take him in this particular spot, though, in the Arlington Million. Who do you like?
I like Fort Washington. I think the pace is going to be very honest. I think if the pace was kind of a little bit slower, I would like Mystk Dan's chances a little because I agree with what you're saying, trip and not the strongest group. I just like there to be intent to try the turf when they're trying it at a graded stakes race.
Yeah.
I just think he's going to struggle to outkick these horses because the pace is going to be honest enough. And that's why I like Fort Washington, who showed a little more trackability and the ability not to be so way out of it and so race dependent. 2 back in the dinner party, which I believe we'll take a look at in a moment. But, the Wise Danny ran 4th by 1 length and 3/4 to Brilliant Birdie, who is a better horse than these. Not at a 1.25 miles, but Brilliant Birdie would be favored in this field, at all things equal distances. So I think Fort Washington, the other Shug McGahee, has a chance to beat his stablemate in the rest of this field from off the pace.
Integration, his stablemate you talk about out of the 8 hole at 8-5 in the morning line. He's been a horse I've tabbed a million times, it seems like, and he always runs his race, but he's not necessarily a horse who gets the bouquet. He doesn't have a bad record. I mean, he's 5 for 14, but there have been some very winnable spots for Integration where he just hasn't quite delivered on it, including of late. He's only won, one of his last 7 races at average odds of 5-2. So, I mean, in those 7 races, he's been an average 2.5-1. and he's 1 for 7 in those spots. So I don't think you need to take him in here. John Velasquez last year came in and won the Secretariat over this turf course with Trickery. So he doesn't ride often, but he's won over the turf course here. And I don't think that hurts to have John Velasquez aboard, but I think it hurts your price. When you see Shug and Velasquez in a race like this, I think integration at 8-5, if he's close to that, I think he's an underlay. I think anything under 5-2, he's an underlay because I don't think he completely stands out against this particular group. In terms of late brisk pace figures, which, I really like on the turf, Fort Washington dwarfs integration in terms of finishing late brisk pace figures. So I think that's a key factor for him. And the late pace figures for Mystk Dan are exceptional too compared to others in this field. So I think the two best finishers in the race are Fort Washington and Mystk Dan. And I think that's how this exacta probably turns out in one shape or another. So we're kind of on the same two kind of horses in this particular spot. That is the Arlington Million. That'll be the third race of our late pick 4 hit and split. So be sure to check out that promotion. Always sign up for the promotions at ExpressBet and FirstBet for the weekend so that you can take advantage of all those player benefits. Again, a hit and split on the late pick 4. Scott will have written analysis for that sequence on the websites at FirstBet and ExpressBet as well. Let's move from Colonial Downs now and head to the Spa. It is August and it is Saratoga mid-meet at this point. The Saratoga Oaks Invitational and the Sword Dancer will give us back-to-back features on the card, races 9 and 10 on the card. They are both on the turf course. They'll go on the Mellon turf for race number 9, and then, of course, they'll be on the inner turf for the 10th. So back-to-back turf races over different courses, though, there at the Spa. Saratoga Oaks Invitational has a field of 6 3-year-old fillies, of course, when we talk about Oaks. Laura Lynn's a filly who's done good things. She's won all 4 career starts, including the Penn Oaks last time out in a monsoon. Can Grand Motion get her to 5 for 5? Scott will tell you after seeing her most recent win.
Laura Lynn's going to come 3 wide, well within striking range, about 1.5 lengths off the lead now, and gaining ground on the top 2. In the meanwhile, Candy Quest has taken the lead, and Laura Lynn moves to her on the outside. Cutting the corner, Pure Majestic trying to hang in there down toward the rail, and from far behind, Bessie Abbott is 4th now in the center of the course, but it's between Laura Lynn and Candy Quest. Laura Lynn takes the lead late, and Laura Lynn's going to win again. An undefeated filly in the Penn Oaks, Laura Lynn by 2 on the wire.
She's taken the path less traveled to get to 4 for 4. She won her maiden, then she won the Tepin Stakes, the Memory of Silvers, the Penn Oaks, a Memory of Silver, and then the Penn Oaks. So she hasn't taken on the big ones in the division, but there's no Theon in this race. There's no nitrogen. So this race for a grade 2 and worth, a purse of $500,000 didn't come up as strong as some of the other races in the division to this point. It's definitely winnable for her. Do you think she will?
Yeah, I think Grand Motion found a great spot for her, all to your points that you made, not taking on the 2 best in the division, but still a grade 2 race with a big purse. Laura Lynn is the clear one to beat in here. She should get a pretty good trip because it's, like you said, just a compact group of 6. Opulent Restraint. We'll see if Flavian Pratt, that's the second choice for Chad Brown. We'll see. He's on board this time for the first time in 3 starts. Was ridden very aggressively last time. Borderline runoff for a Chad Brown for sure. It'd be interesting to see if he tries to stalk just off this time. That might make this a little slower. The only horse I'll mention otherwise, I think Totally Justified is a little bit interesting at a bigger price. One, she might make the lead if Pratt does opt to change the running style of Opulent Restraint. But main reason is that effort 2 back against Fiona, to your point, was as good as anyone in this field. And if she's going to be 6-1 in a 6-horse field like this, she might be worth looking at from a key perspective, first and second in the exotics, and playing with Laura Lynn for sure.
Sure, Rusty Arnold's barn is going really well with limited starters over the course of the summer, so catch them while they're hot. Perhaps Totally Justified Laura Lynn, 2 to keep an eye on there from Scott in the Saratoga Oaks Invitational. That'll be race number 9. If you don't play intra-race and you're looking at multi-race wagers, you got a daily double rolling from races 9 and 10 into the Sword Dancer. Sword Dancer, of course, race number 10, named for the 1959 Horse of the Year. Sword Dancer on the grass at 1.5 miles. Grade 1 company here. we expect to see some international representation in these races at Saratoga when we get to the grade 1 level. We've got Godolphin's El Cordobos in here with Charlie Appleby, as well as Nation's Pride wearing the Godolphin blue, probably the more ballyhoo to the pair from Godolphin in here. We've seen Nation's Pride stateside a couple times, including here at Saratoga, second in the Manhattan back in 2024. This horse has run over the course at Saratoga, has won over the course, winning the Jockey Club Derby, I believe it was back when he was a 3-year-old. So Nation's Pride knows Saratoga, but he hasn't been to the races since April off a dull effort in the Dubai Turf at Maidan. So what do we make of Nation's Pride? Is he the horse to beat, or is he very beatable?
I think he's beatable. I'm not a fan of the way the Applebees in general have run recently compared to all the success that he's had. So it used to be very difficult for a year or two there to toss him. He was winning almost half of his races when some of them were against his own stable. But this horse looks like he clearly has taken a step back. I know he won the Arlington Million, last year at this time, obviously. And then Manhattan before it was one of his fastest races. I think he's regressed a little bit. The pace projector I looked at on Timeform has him on the lead. I think that might make him a little interesting if somehow he makes an easy lead, but I'm not sure that's the trip he wants with William Buick shipping in. So I'm against Nation's Pride at 3-1.
The Arlington Million, defending champ, and that race is worth $250,000 more than this one. And they have another horse in this field. I don't, for the life of me, understand why Nation's Pride would be in this spot and not go back to a very weak edition of the Arlington Million, where he might be favored in that spot as the defending champ in there. So, yeah, often do you criticize Godolphin and their placement and Charlie Appleby? No, you don't do it very often. But in this particular race, it's kind of perplexing to me. You could talk about travel. You can van from Saratoga to Colonial fairly easily. So it's, not
mile
a logistical
versus mile and a quarter, I guess, would be I'm just trying to look for reasons. Doesn't make sense to me either, not to interrupt you. Yeah.
No, he beat Integration last year, and Integration's the favorite this year for the Arlington Million. But hey, that makes this race better, though, the Sword Dancer, and it might make the price on anybody you like a little bit more, because I think he will take some cash, but I don't think he'll go favored because Farbridge is just in a groove right now. He's the favorite, and he's probably the best of the American turf horses right now off a 3-length win in the Bowling Green last out. Miguel Clement doing absolutely nothing wrong at this stage. I know this is your top choice. Let's give the fans a chance to see Farbridge last time.
Race. He's starting to inch up on the outside. El Razine widest of all. They're coming to the furlong pole. Farbridge in complete control. In the center, El Razine motors into second. Farbridge by 6 lengths as they come toward the wire. It's all Farbridge. El Razine with a valiant effort, but he'll only come within about 3.5 lengths of the dominant Farbridge, who wins the bowl.
Now, his stablemate Deterministic last week won the grade 1 cutting back in distance to a mile, the 4-star Dave. Deterministic, of course, won the Manhattan by a neck over Farbridge, the only loss this year for Farbridge. Miguel Clement maybe has the top 2 American turf horses right now. Do you see anybody beating Farbridge here?
I don't, and this is a horse that's grown on me. Even last out at 2-5, I wasn't, or 1-2, I wasn't overly excited, but Joel Rosario, even in some of his slumps that he goes through, he's been riding well at Saratoga this meet and this summer, but he rides this horse well. He gets this horse into the race regularly, which is kind of his Achilles heel in general, as being too passive at times, but he rides this horse well. Like you said, Miguel is firing on all cylinders. 9 for 18, good efforts at Saratoga. The distance is perfect. There's a lot to like here. And again, he might be on the lead. He might be sitting second or third. I don't know if it'll matter at all, to be completely honest.
Cherie DeVoe's got Rebel Red in there. Again, the other Godolphin is the Charlie Appleby trained with Flavian Pratt aboard El Cordobos. This one coming off a win last out and got a 115 Timeform rating. That number stacks up not too far off of Nation's Pride, as Nation's Pride's kind of dropped a little bit in some of those international figures in recent races. So maybe competitive. Maybe the other Godolphin in here might be the value play of the 2 El Cordobos from the rail under Flavian Pratt. But Scott's top choice in here, Farbridge to win the Sword Dancer, 1.5 mile race number 10 on Saturday at Saratoga. We're going to switch gears now and go the regional derby circuit for the last couple picks here on the podcast this week. First off, though, we'll go to Del Mar before that for the Yellow Ribbon Stakes. Yellow Ribbon Stakes on the turf, the Fillies and Mares, Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf Division here for the Yellow Ribbon. Scott, who do you like in this one?
Yeah, what sticks out more than anything in here is there's no speed, and the rails are out at 18 feet in the Yellow Ribbon. So going to be tough to make wide sweeping moves in here if that's your plan. You look around, and it's hard to figure out who's going to be on the lead. I kind of took the easy way out and just took a filly that might be on the lead because she's chased hot paces in the last couple of races she's been in, and this won't be. And I just feel confident that she's going to fire a shot. So not one of my stronger opinions of the weekend or of the year or even of right now, but tough race out there in the Yellow Ribbon. Public Assembly for Phil D'Amato, though, as good a chance as anyone.
Let's go back to her win in the Royal Heroine at Santa Anita as she gets set for the Yellow Ribbon.
Cunningham Wood Flyer, who's trying to dig in. Public Assembly, Yellow Cap, is trying to come one from the rail. And Son of Hill, who was so far back, is coming with an electrifying run. In the meantime, Public Assembly has spurted clear. A 3-length lead close to home. Public Assembly and Antonio Fresu to win the Royal Heroine. The Phil D'Amato exacta completed with Son of Hill. In behind that,
Phil D'Amato with another strong hand to play in the Yellow Ribbon Stakes. That'll be the feature Saturday at Del Mar. Let's go to Minnesota Derby night at Canterbury Park, race number 6. Of course, First Bet, the official app of Canterbury Racing, so one of our sister tracks there. We're going to give this race a little bit of love, and the Canterbury Derby is at 1.70 miles for the Minnesota breds. Field of 8 here in the feature race for $75,000. It was a dominant win last time out in the Canterbury Derby. That was on the turf for Sushi Man. Now back in with the state breds. But watch this one on the turf, and we'll see, can anyone beat him on Saturday night?
Sushi Man is showing no signs of stopping, opening up by 5. It's Sushi Man from Homie off the layoff. After that, R&R Audible. Outside of that is Canyon Streak. It is Sushi Man tearing away, and Sushi Man is gone. He wins the Canterbury Derby under a triple hammer line.
You can't get enough Paul Allen on your podcast for sure. Tracking out to there at Canterbury. Also the voice of the NFL's Minnesota Vikings. And Paul busy doing some double time preseason football, Canterbury Derby, a Minnesota Derby on Saturday night. You've got a horse in here maybe to upset Sushi Man, though. Sushi Man was 0 for 4 to start the career and really found a home on turf. Will he transfer that to the dirt? He's kind of doing the reverse Mystk Dan here on Saturday night. You've got a horse, though, a little bit more seasoned on the main track.
Yeah, more seasoned, but not seasoned at winning. Just 1 win and 10 starts for Abel Seaman. But when I look at this race, all I see is speed, and not only out speed, like Flying Martini, who's been loose on the lead in the last couple of starts, one on the dirt, one on the turf, and Sushi Man, who, like you said, has found a new home on the turf. But you've got sprinter speed in here, and that's what makes me think, even if Sushi Man is classier than some of these horses, it's going to be real tough to make an easy lead. You got Arjun for Cars on the inside. You've got Beggin for Trouble, who shows some speed. Probably won't be on the lead. TC Gold. Towner 2 on the outside. I'm going to play the collapse in here, Jeremy, and my lone Minnesota state bred selection of the year on the podcast, and roll with number 3, Abel Seaman, who is likely to be way out the back in another C, but doesn't have much speed, but he can finish. I'm hoping for a collapse. I think at 8-1 or higher. This horse is, a fun bet and a legitimate chance.
He's been trying to rally at Prairie Meadows. Abel Seaman, your top choice in here. And that's one of the front favoring tracks in America, one of the most speed favoring tracks there are. So Abel Seaman obviously did not get the kind of race shape and race track setups and profiles that you would want for his running style. He should get that 8-1 in the morning line. 4 of the 8 in here are stretching out off of basically exclusively sprint resumes, as you mentioned. So you say, well, why are so many of them doing it? Because this is the one shot to run for $75,000 against straight 3-year-old state breds in here, Minnesota registered runners. So they're here for the restrictions, not for the distance and for the purse money. But that kind of does set up the potential for Abel Seaman. 8-1 in the morning line. That's Scott's top choice. in the Minnesota Derby. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what song do they play before the Minnesota Derby. I don't know.
I'm trying to think. Oh, wow. Maybe they just all go, Skull.
We'll have to ask Paul about that one.
I don't know. Maybe the U of University of Minnesota fight song. That's about all I got. Those are the only songs I know.
You're a Wisconsin guy, so that should probably pain you then, right?
Reciprocity, man. I knew a lot of kids from Minneapolis area came to school in Wisconsin because they had, and vice versa, because they had the reciprocity. You got in-state tuition, so.
Let's switch things up now to Ellis Park on Sunday, a rare Sunday handicapping tab for us here on the podcast. It's Ellis Park Derby Day. A lot of stakes races on the card. They run the pseudo one-turn mile out of the chute for the Ellis Derby here. This is a race where we've got some horses that we've seen along the major stakes trail this year. Admiral Dennis, Big Truz, horses that have run in races like the Bluegrass, the Woody Stevens. You got some up-and-comers in this race as well, including Retribution, a horse that we saw on Preakness Day on the undercard, winning nicely in the Chick Lang in a wide open race.
Front and turning for home. It's 1-900 and a wall of horses coming after that one now. Ancient World rebounds after some trouble around the far turn. Here comes Ancient World on the outside. And in between horses, Retribution rolling. Retribution now. Retribution. Touchy's coming with late kick on the far outside. Retribution in front. A 16th of a mile left to go in the Chick Lang Stakes. Unrushing. Touchy on the outside. Running out of time. Retribution. Retribution. Second was Touchy.
Let's make the case, Scott. Why does Retribution beat Admiral Dennis and Big Truz, the horses who are coming out of the bigger races?
Well, first off, I think this is a good time of year to keep in mind that class early in the year for 3-year-old doesn't necessarily equate to class later in the year. Mm-hmm. You look at races like, horses that have been in the bigger races. That's great that they've been in those races. They obviously deserve respect for it, but they can also get over bet. I think that'll be the case here with both Admiral Dennis and Big Truz. And plus, if a Brian Lynch horse doesn't get a bet at Ellis, they're usually not live. So I would think Topeboard will tell us what the barn thinks. I think the pace will be lively in here, and I think this is a perfect spot for Cherie DeVoe to stretch this horse out past one turn. You mentioned the 1 mile configuration at Ellis. A lot, similar to an extent to the Wilson Chute at Saratoga, not a true two-turn race at all. 1.5 turns is kind of how it's described, the closest thing to it. So I think it's the perfect chance to stretch this horse out. The pedigree doesn't say he's going to love going long, but I just think this horse is the most talented horse in the field and has been well managed, as usual, by Cherie.
I wouldn't be surprised if Jimmy's Dailies doesn't show a little bit in here. Why run 2 when 1 will do, they say. This is the other Brian Lynch. And this horse at Gulfstream this year looked like he had a little bit of game about him. And I thought he was going to advance up and be kind of useful. He's not super fast, so the 1-turn, 2-turn, pseudo 2-turn mile race may not suit him perfectly in here, but you got a speed jock in Mario Gutierrez aboard. He's obviously got company lines running against Japan Street twice already this year. And, of course, Sovereignty in the Florida Derby. He was well beaten in that spot. This is kind of an interesting comeback spot for him, and it's not a race that's going to demand as much fitness as a 1 1/8 around 2 turns. I mean, this is, like you said, the 1-turn flat mile with 1.5 turns to it. He's got an inside draw in the 3-hole. I kind of think Jimmy's Daily is going to be fit enough. He's working really strong for this. He's kind of my upset pick in here. You got Retribution at 9-2. I'll take Jimmy's Dailies at 5-1, and we'll try to beat the 2 big names. I've been a big fan of Big Trust since his Keeneland debut win, and each time he runs, I get a little bit less fandom. He just has kind of not been the horse I thought maybe he would be. Maybe he shows up and this is the one for him. As for Admiral Dennis from the outside, I mean, you can have him at 8-5. He could certainly win this race coming off the win in the Delaware Derby. He's spotted properly here by Brad Cox. They're not trying ridiculous races with him, but I'll try to beat him at a short price. I don't think he has to win.
No, Jimmy's Dailies was a horse I was attracted to right away and just was more attracted to Retribution. To the point about Brian Lynch and the money, take note of how this race is bet between the 2 Lynches. Jimmy's Dailies looks like he's training better. I'm not sure if they've been working. No, they haven't been working together, but or maybe last one they did the 5 furlong draw on August 3rd. But anyway, I think Jimmy's Dailies should run well. Interesting choice of jockey with Mario Gutierrez. I'm not sure what to make of that. Haven't been following the Ellis circuit day in and day out, but I think makes a lot of sense to run a big race.
That's going to wrap up our handicapping for this weekend, Saturday and Sunday races here on the First Call podcast. I want to remind you it's opening night at Remington Park in Oklahoma City, so a new track into the simulcast fold. A lot of really good racing tonight. In fact, in Friday as we record our podcast, in the 10 o'clock hour tonight Eastern, there are 3 stakes races around the country, a lot of big carryovers and sequences, so stay up a little late if you can, or get your wagers in early at First Bet and Express Bet. Scott's going to be long asleep by 10 p.m., but, some good action. Del Mar's got their featured stakes race in that hour as well. Stakes tonight. The Dan Patch Stakes, one of the top harness races on the calendar, also during that 10 o'clock hour tonight. Al Samagli has got you covered with not only of some handicapping of that race, the Dan Patch, but the pick 4 sequence that goes around that at Hoosier Park tonight. So be sure to check that out. 10 times wager rewards points tonight for Hoosier Park for their big Dan Patch card. And again, Al Smagli has got the picks for you at expressbet.com and at news.first.com. Scott and I will be back next week to do some more handicapping. I'll return on Tuesday for the It's Official podcast when we wrap up the big headline of the weekend. Scott, I'm going to put you on the spot. What will be the big headline on Tuesday?
That's a tough one. Big headline on Tuesday. That's tough on these turf ones. That's a great Mystk Dan heading back to the dirt after a poor performance on turf despite perfect trip.
All right. I hope you're wrong with that, but you may be right. We will find out this weekend. It's always nice to have a Kentucky Derby winner back, regardless of whatever level their form is and whatever race they're in. And it's at least interesting and intriguing to see, because if he takes to the turf, then a whole new world could be opened up. That's a wrap for the show this week. Good luck, everybody. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.